Greetings, this is Mr. Curious. I'm here to present a video tutorial on how to use the SMD tool that was created by Son of Persia. He's been busy over the last couple of years creating custom tools for us to edit the various files in Resident Evil 4 UHD. My most favorite is the SMD tool because it allows us to create custom stages. And what that means is that we can edit stage models, we can remove them, we can create new stages from scratch. It's been very fun to learn all of this, and I want to thank Son of Persia personally for allowing me to beta test these tools. So with that said, I'm going to just jump right into it and let you guys know what we're going to need. Besides the SMD tool, we're going to need the LFS tool, the YZ2 tool for our textures, the SMD tool to open up the stage models, the UHD tool, which I will show you contains a whole bunch of Resident Evil 4 files, and then of course a 3D application like 3ds Max or Blender. Today we're going to use 3ds Max. So what is a stage file? Well, essentially when you load the game up, the game goes into your BIO4 directory and loads the rooms from one of these 8 folders. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So today we're going to pick a stage, and I'm going to extract the stage model, and then we're going to look at what it looks like in 3ds Max and then change some things around. So let's start off by going into our BIO4 directory and then choosing a stage here, stage 1, and then choosing a room within that stage. You'll notice that these stages have these extensions called LFS, which are essentially a compression that the developers use to make the files smaller. So in order for us to open these UHD files, we will need to remove this extension. So I'm going to copy this and put it into the folder with the LFS tool. There's various scripts in here, and this will all be provided with the tool set. So I'll paste that in there and then just hit the run file. But if you look at it, there's just some, so it's running a script which is this, which was created by I think a guy named Louis. Anyway, we're going to run that, and you'll see that the LFS extension has been removed. So we're going to cut this now, this UHD file. We're going to paste it in a folder with our UHD tools. So this is just a working directory. Like, you can put these tools, you can see that I have all these different stages that I've edited. But and they all have the same tools. So you can just put the tools in a working folder and extract it. You'll see now that a folder has been created and an index file. The index is just basically a list of all the files that are in here. So if you look inside the UHD, you see we have a whole bunch of files: cam files, lit files, effect files, ETM, ITM. Included in this tool set are many tools that will let us edit many of these files. But today we're going to be dealing with the SMD. Now, this is not to be confused with a model SMD file. Like with Valve, you can open up SMD models, and they're like object files, and they're essentially model files that contain vertices. But this SMD file is simply a container. Like the UHD file itself is a container, the SMD file is also a container. So we're going to copy that and open it up. So I'm going to paste that again in another working directory with these tools and extract it. And wait for the tool to work its magic. It doesn't take very long. Again, there's an index file and a folder has been created with a whole bunch of files. You'll notice that my tool here has a different name. It says V9. That is just so that I'm aware of the different versions that I've been beta testing, but the tools you have will have just simply say RE4 SMD tool. So now looking at the contents of this, you can see that there's been a whole bunch of material files, and these tell us which materials and which textures are applied to those materials. Some object files, which are 3D models. This looks like a plane. If we look at another model, okay, this looks like the, what do they call that? The insignia. Anyway, you can see there's different models in there. There's no textures applied because I don't have the textures in the same folder here. But we've opened up the church room 108, so you might recognize some of these models from that. So we have material files, object files. They get packed into bin files, which is what the game reads. And some of these object files also have accompanying files called AR and GB. I'll explain that later, but essentially what these are alpha, red, green, and blue. The developers decided that instead of simply using textures to deal with transparency and lighting issues, that they would edit the vertex data so that they could create different transparencies on just part of the model or different luminosity. With these files, essentially you can make a model transparent without using a texture. So in this example, there's a fence. So they might have made part of the fence darker at the bottom, or there might be a plate on here that's see-through or something like that. So it gives a lot of dexterity for when editing models, but it's a bit tricky to edit these models because we have to edit all 3 models exactly to be the exact same shape, same size, same scale. They have to have the same amount of vertices. So if we are to edit one of these models like this, we also have to edit this model and this model simultaneously. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. In the beta tools that I used, we didn't even have this, and I did just fine. But if you're going to get technical and you want to make things perfect, you will have to edit these models, and I can show that later. And for now, I'm going to continue on and explain the remaining files in this folder. So we have a bunch of material, object, and bin files, and then also we have a TPL file. A TPL is a texture palette list that essentially lists all the textures that are used by the SMD file. It corresponds with all these bin files. So you have a bin and you have a TPL. And lastly, we have, well, second to last, we have a model object that's generated. This is for reference, and essentially this shows us the entire room. So here we have it. So you're not really going to see it because the sky is over it, but if I zoom in, it's hard to see with Noesis. Anyway, you can kind of get an inkling of what's in there. There's some fencing and whatnot. The sky model is blocking it, but this is the whole room, every single model and its position of where it should be. Now we don't really use that when we're repacking, we just use that as for reference. And lastly, we have the model data text. Now you can imagine the model data text as a playlist, and these are the songs. So imagine that the bin files are songs, and this is the playlist. Essentially, the tool reads the playlist and says, okay, play or use model number 5 and place it at these coordinates, do it at this scale, use this SMX entry and whatnot. So this is basically it lists how many models are drawn up by the engine. You can see here that we actually only have 92 separate models, starting from 0 to 91. So that means we have 92 models. But here it says the model data count is almost 400. So what does that mean? Essentially that means that some of these models here are being called on more than once. Now what's the purpose of that? Why wouldn't you just make a model to include everything? Well, the developers needed to save disk space, and in order to do that, they just simply made one model, and you would repeat it. What this model Datatex does is tells the engine, use this model and draw it here, draw it there, and draw it somewhere else. So for example, bin number 1F. Let's see if it's used more than once. I'm also using Notepad+. I would suggest that you use that other than the regular Notepad, because it has more than one level of undo, whereas regular Notepad you can only undo one level. There's also some very handy search features, which I'm going to show you here. So we're going to look for bin number 1F, and let's see how many counts there are. Okay, so 45. There are 45 instances where this model 1F is used. Now you're thinking, 1F, what does that mean? There's no 1F in here. Well, that's because 1F is in hex. So we need to translate 1F to know what that is. But anyway, the tool does it for us. It tells us that it's model 31. But if you were to translate this value of hex into decimal, you would get 31. So let's look, for example, let's look at 31 here. Okay, I can tell what this is. You can't. This is a bush. You probably don't see it, but essentially these are planes with transparent textures on them. So this is like a little bush that we're going to see. So that bush is drawn up 45 times, and you'll see it. Let's see if yeah, there it is again, 1F. So you see here that it's at 144. Here it's at 1521. So, and the rotation is different. So you can use the model Datatex to rotate and change models, but I usually don't get too finicky about that because disk space is not so sparse now, and it's sometimes easier to just put all the models into one and keep their position at 0. Anyway, I'm going to explain some more about this. So now we have all these models. How do we look at this? Well, we're going to need to import it into 3ds Max. But we have several options. Now, and I need to explain something here. Essentially, let's import this model object. But to do that, we're going to need the textures to be in the same folder. So now we're going to look for the textures of the room. So we are using room 108. So now we need to go to our image pack folder and look for the pack file that has 108. Now all room pack files start with 44, 1, 2, 3 zeros, and then the room number, so 108. There it is. Now this is the default pack version. I would suggest that you use Albert's HD pack, but if you don't have that, you'll have to do the same thing. Take the LFS file, stick it in here, run it, and then you'll have a version of this without it, and then you would stick it in with these YZ2 tools. But for today, I'm going to go dig up Albert's version because it's so beautiful. The work that he and Chris do is amazing, and he has also been very helpful in helping me understand so much about this game. He is truly a master. So here we go again. We're looking for the pack file, and there's Albert's version. So we're going to copy that and then stick that in a folder with the YZ2 tool, and we're going to unpack it. You will see now that a folder has been generated with all of Albert's and Chris's lovely textures. So while that draws up, I'll show you a little trick that I learned. If we take the model material and the model object and copy those and stick them in the same folder. Oh, I need to paste here. I need to find some blank space. Paste them into this folder. When we import them into 3ds Max, it will know where all the textures are because they're in the same folder. So now, because essentially this model data text that is created doesn't have a path. Normally if this had a path before here, it would load up just fine. So I'm going to copy this path and open up 3ds Max. And I'm going to import and paste this here. Open. And there's our model file. And just hit enter. Now the scale at which you open it, I think, is, yes, 1. And the axis is not, flip YZ is not opened. Texture coordinates, if you look at these settings here, I'm just not sure if these are the default or whether these are ones that I've saved, because I have saved numerous presets here. Import as editable poly. Okay, so now we hit OK on that. Now if we get this, there's not to worry. This is because the model data text calls on a TGA, but Albert's pack file uses a DDS. Now this is the same file, the same image, but Albert has used a DDS. But the tool, the SMD tool, does not care whether you use DDS or TGA. And if your model data text, or sorry, if your material files say TGA, it will, and you have a DDS, it doesn't matter. It's still going to load it. So we can just say skip that. Now whether or not that loads into 3ds Max, we will have to see. Okay, so it's missing the opacity map for those files. I think it was 3 and we have 1. No big deal. Okay, wow, what's this weird looking thing? Well, that's the sky. I'm going to just turn that off. I'm going to turn this off. And let's zoom in. There we go. There we have the church. Bet you've never seen it like this, have you? So you're wondering, what are these black things? Well, those are actually shadows. And because our opacity maps didn't load properly, we're only seeing the black part. So anyway, this is what it looks like. And you can see, let's see model 5 here. This is all one model. If we isolate that, you can see that that's the shadows of the terrain. So the roof here, for example, is part of 2024. So this is all one model right here, which is the main church building. So if we were to look at that in here, 24. There you have it. So the model data text draws up this model. If we look at, let's look for model number 24. I always like to do count. Okay, obviously there's only one. Let's find it. There it is. A note about how these tools work. Anything that is preceded by, or anything that is after one of these pound signs, the tool is not going to read. So we can make notes about these, like church, building. And this allows us to you know, understand, like, okay, what am I looking at here? And then later you can look it up and look up church, but make sure you spell things right. Anyway, so this is model number 24. Now we see that the model, these are the coordinates of the model. So what that means, usually models are either have coordinates like this that are governed by the model Datatex file, or the coordinates are at 0, 0, 0, like this. Now what that means is, if I were to export this model and save it as one of these, its position, and I wanted it to appear where it is, I would need to keep the position at 0, 0, 0. This means draw the model exactly where it is in the scene in 3ds Max. But if the coordinates are like this, that means that the model itself is actually positioned at 0, 0, 0, and the tool is telling it to move. And I will show you what I mean by this. I know it might be confusing, but I'm trying my best to explain. Let's just put this as model, what was that, 40, wait, let's look for church. Okay, so model number 24. OG, original. So let's import 24 from here. Instead of, remember, all the models that you see that we just imported came from this. That's for reference only. This is where the actual models are. So we're going to copy this for the import here. Paste it, and what do we got? Okay, 24. Okay, so here's the church. Again, and this is where it originally is. So, why is it over here in the game? That's because it's in relation to this. So this is actually at 0, 0, 0, but when we tell it to be here, that's where it's going to show up. So, why do they do this? Well, for example, I told you earlier that there may be numerous models that we want to draw up everywhere. I'm not sure why they did it with this particular model, but you'll often see that. So, oh, and another reason, you're like, why is there no textures? Well, I imported this from this destination, and there are no texture files. So one way to avoid that, if you want to in the future, is to copy all these texture files and keep them in the same directory as the tool. I don't necessarily like to do it that way myself, but because it's just more file space and whatnot. But anyway, let's delete that, import it again. And I think with the textures in place, it's going to draw with the textures applied. There you go. See? Okay, so I could move this church around if I want by placing some numbers in front of it and changing it like that, but that's a pain in the butt. We like to do it with the positioning tools. So what do I want to teach you guys first? Let's just put a second church in. How about we do that? We're going to just learn about the just using this model Datatex. We're going to draw up a second church. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to copy. This is what's called an entry. So I think there are 395 entries in this. So we're going to copy this entire entry. We're going to paste it at the bottom. Our last entry is 394. So let's paste that. Okay, now, so I've just pasted this. So I'm going to change this to 395. Now, I don't have to change anything that's in these areas, but I do that just so I know how many there are. So model number 24, church. Now, if I don't change anything here, it's just going to draw it in the exact same place. But let's move it, I don't know. Let's just move it up. Let's move it up by that much. So Z is up and X and Y are left and right or whatever. And we can rotate it. Let's rotate it a little bit. And the scale is the same. We can change the scale with this. Okay, so if I am to put a new entry in here, I also have to update the data count up top. So I'm adding one model. So now I go File, Save. And all we need to do now is hit Repack. There you have it. Now we take this SMD that's been updated, copy it, and we go paste it in the UHD folder. Now this one seems significantly larger. I wonder why. In any case, there you have it. So now we repack the UHD file. You take the UHD file and you copy that and you put it in your bio4 directory where the original UHD is. In ST1, we're going to paste. Now, an important thing to note is that if there is another version of the 108 with LFS, it must be renamed to whatever, LFS back, so that this will load. LFS files take precedence over UHD files. If you're using Razor's DLL companion, this will not be the case, as he has set LFS files to take less precedence than the originals, which is a very handy feature that he developed. But if you're not using his DLL, or in any case, just change that extension. So now we're ready to load up the church. I'm using Razor's Trainer here, so we simply type in 108 here, village graveyard, and I'm going to disable the enemies, and I'm running this in windowed mode, which I don't normally do, so I'm going to have to mess around with how the mouse captures this. How do I do that? I can do a little trick here. There we go. Okay, so let's try that. Here we are at the church. Cutscene. We don't see the church in the cutscene there. Oh, there it is. So it's really way high up there. I can, so if I change, we can change the height and change this back. What was it originally? I think it was 11. Let's just try it at 12 or 21. So I'm going to save that. Okay, and then what do? We go back to the SMD tool, Repack. Copy this, paste it in the UHD folder, replace, repack the UHD, copy, and finally back into our Bio4 SD1 directory, paste, copy. There we go. Again, retry. Keep thinking I'm going backwards. And there's the church again. So you can see that this is an example of how the model Datatex can be used to draw up the same, using the same model. Now, what we can try, instead of using the model Datatex, we can let's do a different model so we're not confused by what we're doing. Here's the bell. So let's take the bell there and copy it. Make sure you use copy and not instance, because the instance will move with the original when you move it. So we're going to take the bell here and stick it somewhere we can see it. Now, this is a different way of exporting models. So now we're going to, instead of using the model Datatex to draw up an original model, we're going to add, let's first edit this model. Let's just tweak it a bit. Okay, so now we're going to export this model to our SMD folder. Now it's going to have to be one after our last model. So this is the reason why I don't like putting these textures in here. I'm just going to type. I'm just going to remove these textures because they're not necessary right now. Okay, so our last model is 91. So we are going to go to this directory and save it as 0092. Save. Export. Done. Now what we need to do now is update the TPL file. Now this is what I always recommend, and you must do this, is just create a new folder here, backup. And what I like to put in the backup folder is the TPL file and the model Datatex file. Just in case anything goes wrong or weird, we have a backup of those. So now let's change this to 93 because our last model is 92. We also need to create an entry for it. So we're going to leave our other church there and we're going to make the next entry. So I'm going to paste this here. Let's make that 396. It's going to be weird shape. I can't type. Now, instead of using these weird coordinates, if we want this model to be exactly where it is in the game or in the scene here, we're gonna have to put all these at 0. And for whatever reason, Y always says -0, so I just do that. Rotation 0. Whoops. And now the bin number is important to know. So what is our bin number? Well, we know that it's 92. So what is that in hex? So if we go to a hex site and type in 92, oops, decimal 92, it's going to be 5C. So we're going to change the bin number to 5C. We've changed, we know there's 396 is the last one, so this goes up 1 because we're including 0, right? So 397. So this is the what it should be. Now we file save that. Now what needs to happen is this IDX file needs to be updated. The index model count, we're at 93 now because our last model is 92 and our first model is 0. This tells the tool which pack file to use. And this, if we were to add new textures, we would change this, but we're not adding any new textures now, so we're just going to leave that alone. Right now, all we're doing is updating the model count. So I'm going to save that. And now we're ready to repack this again. Just making sure I'm still recording. Okay, so that's been repacked. We're going to copy it. We're going to put it back in the UDAS. Paste. Now, I'm doing this the long and painful way, like going into each folder. Like when I normally do this, I have shortcuts to UDAS folders. I have scripts that basically do all of this with the press of one button. And I can share those scripts with you guys with the release of the tools. But for the tutorial's sake, I am going through each of these folders manually so you can see exactly what we're doing. So we just pasted this new file in our UDAS folder. Now we're going to repack the UDAS. We're going to copy that and put it back in here. Okay, replace. So let's look at our new blob shape in the game. There it is. Now you'll notice that you know, like with collision data, you can't walk through a model, but this model I can walk through. Well, why is that? Well, models don't have the collision data built into them. We use a separate file to do that, and there will be a separate tutorial on how to use that. But there you have it. So that is our model as seen in here. Cool, right? So now let's do something next level, which would be to put a different texture in. Let's take a model from somewhere else. Let's take a model from another SMD that I've opened. Let's just randomly look at a model. I don't know here. Type. Okay, we have some chairs. Let's use those. That's model 62. So I'm just going to copy this directory so I know how to import it. I'm going to make a new layer. and just say chairs. See, I can't type. Jesus, Murphy. I'm not dyslexic. I'm just a terrible typer. And it wouldn't... Anyway, what did we say that was? 62? Sorry, I forget. And gosh, I keep opening up the wrong... I think it's 62. Okay, so there's a name conflict. It wants to rename the mesh. Yes, that's fine. Rename all of them. What do we have? We have some chairs. I'm going to move them into sight. Now they look very small. They look like little mini chairs. Now why is that? Well, if you're importing models from other rooms, there could be various reasons. If we look at the model data text from this room, and we look up model number 62, you can see that the scale is different. The scale is times 20. So some rooms in Resident Evil 4 use different scale. Sometimes they're 100 times bigger, sometimes they're 10 times bigger, sometimes they're 20 times bigger. So for whatever reason, this model is 20 times smaller. So we can scale that up if we want it to be the proper scale. I think you do 2000, if I'm not mistaken. Where'd they go? Oh, they're over here now. Yeah, so that was the right way to scale that. So to fit this particular room. So let's put those chairs right by where we start, so we don't have to hike around for too long to look. Now remember, these chairs come from another room, which means that they are going to have a different texture, or textures that are not located in this pack file. So we cannot export these as a new model until we put textures applied to them that are in our pack file. So if we go back and look at the material file for 62, because remember, this is this other room we're looking at here. 47. So this thing uses file 47 from the pack file from 11B. So we're going to need to find that pack file. So it's R11B. So again, we go to our image pack HD and go 4400, and then we go 11B. Now, what have I done wrong here? Is there too many zeros? Or not enough? What am I doing wrong here? Well, the TPL will tell me. Anyway, for whatever reason I can't find, or maybe it's not in Albert's. Let me just open a new tab. 4400011B. There it is. So I'm going to copy that and put it in our pack file folder with the YZ2 tool. I'm going to unpack it. Now, what file did we say it was? Again, I gotta look. Oh, it wasn't even that. What model is it? Is it 62? Sorry. Yeah, 47 is the texture we need for that. So we're going to take the texture from this pack file 47, copy it, and paste it here. Now we have to look at our work, or 108 here, and look at the last, what's the last texture number? Is 209. Now all these textures here are for the stages, and then at some point you'll see that it's for the effects. The effects are usually towards the end, so you have the water effect here, and then you have your ITA items, which are like your treasures and the medallions, the bird's nest. So anyway, we have to look at what our last texture number is, 209. We can actually get rid of these now. So 209 is the last texture in our pack file. So we rename this to 0210 and put that in 108. You can see that it's in here now, and that's for our chair. So now we take our chair and select the material from it, and then simply do this. We can get rid of that, and this is our new one. Whoops. That's specular. You're going to want to assign it to diffuse. Another way you can do it is simply drag and drop it onto the model. But sometimes models have more than one texture, so I suggest that you do it through the material editor, and all the materials will show up, and you have to do the same thing for each texture that is new to the pack file. You have to introduce the same way in ordered number, sequential order. So here we have 210. So now this model here is assigned this texture, which is in our pack file. So next what we have to do is repack this. Then this, so that repacked this here, so we copy this, and now instead of, now what we need to do is open the Bio4 folder, Image Pack HD, and paste our new updated pack file there. Again, if there is an LFS, it should be renamed back. Now this file will load. So now the model has the texture applied, the texture is in place. We're going to export this model. What do we export it to? 93 this time. Save. Export. So now if we look in here, we'll see that 93 is our last model. That means we need to update this TPL. So again, copy it before you change it. Paste it in here. Now, because this TPL is, it didn't change the last time, but now it's going to change, that we're adding a new texture. So those two files that you just saw backed up there, they're actually the same file. But this, once we change this, it's going to change once we add that model and repack, it's going to change that TPL. So what do? We got to add a model data entry. 397. This doesn't matter really, but it's for reference. So what's the model number? Like in case you wanted to look later, 0093. And this is our chairs. And we know that the last model, 90. Actually, no, I don't want to assume that. 93. Let's look again. 5D. That's one up from 5C, so we just change that. The bin number is the model number. We're going to put it right where it belongs. Now we need to update this and save. This is the old model data text. Now, okay, so our model's here. The material you can see is 210. And we're ready to repack, but this time we have to update the IDX. Now, this is where things get tricky. 89 was the last texture that was used by a model in this room. Or the 89th, that counting 0. So this is the last texture that's used. The model data, or this index, does not account for model or textures that are used by effects and ITA or ITM and ETM, which are like the breakable boxes and treasures and things. So we're actually skipping a whole bunch of these, and we're going to put our first texture index at 210. So the tool, just to go back over that, 89, the tool knows that in that TPL that we have, that TPL, the last texture that is used here, you can see is 44. That's the room number is 58 is the last texture that is used. If we look at what 58 in decimal is 88. And so that shows us that the tool stopped counting textures here. So that's essentially where our effect stuff starts. And so now we're telling it we need to add another texture at 210. So we just put in 210 here and save. This thing's ready to go. Oh wait, we didn't update the model count. That's important too. It's actually essential. Usually the model number is going to match the TPL number, but it's not always the case. Or maybe it is always the case. Anyway, we're ready to repack. We've updated our model data text. We've changed the number of the TPL. We've told it which texture to start at. Now, and we've updated the model count. Now, if this model had more than one texture, you're still, like, let's say these chairs had like 3 textures applied to them, but that the first texture was at 210, you're still going to tell the IDX to start at 210, and after you repack, this number will change to the last number. Okay, so we're ready to repack. We're going to paste that into our UDAS directory. We're going to go up a level, repack the UDAS. We're going to copy the UDAS, put it in ST1, and paste, replace. And now we're ready to check it out again. And remember, this has been, we need to repack this, but we've already done that. But this new pack file needs to have this new texture in it. If it doesn't, the game will crash. So let's go back to our game. And there's the chairs. Not bad. But you'll see it has no collision data. I can actually just walk right through it. So let's try something else again. So now we have our chair there. We could put more chairs if we want using just the model data text. Just put another entry in, same model number, everything's the same. We're just doing a new entry, but let's make them higher. And let's rotate them. And so we're going to update this. Save. Repack. Copy. Paste. Replace. Repack. Copy. Paste. And go back here. Huh. I don't see it. So what did I do wrong? Let's have a look. Maybe the rotation is too much. 398. Did I update this? Yes, I did. $5D. Yeah, that should draw this exactly where it is. Let's try that again for whatever reason. So an easy way to do this is to create a shortcut here. And copy this, put it in this folder. So when we update this, you just simply drag it into there. Bam. And then you repack this. And I even have scripts that repack that, and then you could have a shortcut for ST1 here. Put that in your UDAS mod. So you just, once that's repacked, just drag that into ST1. All right, let's try that again. I don't know why it didn't work, but it's good. It's good that there is failure in this video because you will encounter plenty of it, and you will get crashes too. So let's launch the game again. I'm full screen here, Alt, Enter. I need to resize this. I use a little application called Scott's Window Resizing. Oh yeah, you can simply just drag the target over it and it'll find, there it is. So we're going to change this to whatever. Okay, oh yeah, we need to go to our trainer. 108 is loaded, okay. So for some reason, I'm going to just look down below. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I just didn't see it. I'm using Razor's trainer to go up and down like this. So anyway, there it is. That was our model data text. But I usually don't do this. If I wanted 4 chairs, I would simply do this and, you know, copy the chairs and export it as one model. So let's just say we want to make a whole new scene. We want to get rid of all this, but we want to use the room 108 for whatever reason. Maybe it's because we like the wind in 108, or we like the, let's say we want to use the church puzzle behind there. We want to keep that or something, but you want to get rid of everything else. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to see how long our video has been running for. Actually, I don't even know how long it's been running for. I guess we'll just keep going. So in order to get rid of models, it's very easy, but there are certain models that we can't get rid of. We can get rid of models by simply getting rid of their entries in the model Datatex file. But if we were to remove certain models, like if we just remove them all and put this at, or even just put that at 0, the game would crash. And the reason for that is because of this special offset, which is the last one in each entry. Normal models use the offset. It's usually 0 times 0, 0 times 8, or 0C or whatever. I'm not sure what the rest of those are, C, but normally they are 0, 0 or 0, 8. I just use 0, 8 because that's what most of them have. But the ones that have 0, 9, those are, oh, I'm sorry, I should have been zoomed in on this the whole time. Ones that use 0, 9 are models that move in the game. So if we are to remove these models, the game will crash. So we need to essentially isolate each of the entries that use type 9 offset, or type 9 in offset 6871, and bring them all to the front. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go find, and then offset 9 and count. So we have 8 moving models. So let's find them all. There's one. There's the next one. There's another one after it. So I'm going to copy this. 9, 9. So there's 2 of them. I'm going to cut that. I'm going to bring this all the way to the top and paste it after the last one. And then just put a line here so I know where I'm going. All right, let's find the next one. There it is. I'm going to take this whole entry and cut it. Cut. We're going back up to the top again. We're going to paste it at the end there. Okay, find next. It's getting annoying, sorry. 9. There's another one right after it. A lot of them precede each other, so it's always good to just look down a bit. Okay, there I got three more of them there. So we're putting all these at the top, just so that I can stay organized and keep them all in one place. Okay, so that's it. So now I can get rid of everything else that's here. But let's do something fun. Let's keep our chairs. We need somewhere to sit, don't we? All right. So now these entry counts aren't really going to help us at all because we've removed everything. So how do we know what the model data count should be? Well, the easiest way to do that is to take a value. I just basically go model data entry and I copy this and I paste it here and I go count. 9. There you have it. So we have 9 models. So essentially you could update it yourself manually just for your own reference, but it doesn't matter because they're followed by a pound sign, so they're only for reference. So the easiest way to do it is to just do the last one, so when you're adding them after this entry, you'll know which one it is. Actually, this would be 8 if the first one is 0. But in any case, we can save this now and reload, and we should see a big blank room. So let's repack. Now it's actually still packing the models in the SMD file, but it's not going to draw them up in the engine. So we're just going to take that, put it in our UDAS folder, then we're going to go to UDAS, repack, put this into the ST1 folder. There you go. And back to our game. All right, so here we are back at the church. Okay, so all you see in this room now are the chairs that we have. Any of the models that I said were moving models, but they can also be special models for whatever reason. Like these ones are these are the shadows that you're seeing here. In any case, oh, how did that? Oh, I see. That model also is special because it's a moving model. You shoot it and it moves, and there's other stuff you're seeing here are effects. So those trees aren't models, they're actually effects. And those trees are effects. And that door up there that you see is a ETM door. And these are ETM models. Now I don't know why those textures are missing. I will have to look into that. That's kind of strange. Oh, I know why. The reason for that is that we are not using Albert's texture pack, or that we are using his. For whatever reason, if you use Albert's texture packs, you need to use his UDAS files because he edited his ETM models to all call on the 07000000 pack file. It was a way to preserve space. So just remember, if you're editing an UDAS file from the original game, you need to use the original pack file. And if you're using Albert's textures, which I suggest that you use his UDAS files. In any case, it's not too hard to fix. But here you have it. So now we have a fresh room. And if we wanted to get rid of those effects, we could remove them manually with the EFF tool. And so let's go look at that bell for a second. I think I can shoot that bell. You might not at this point. I think you might have to trigger some other kind of event first to shoot the bell. Yeah, it doesn't look like you can shoot it just yet. But in any case, yeah, all these models that you see here are those Type 9 models, or they are ETM, ITM, or effects. And that's important to know about this Type 9 type of entry. We have to really be careful to keep all of those. Now, we can actually change the model of these. We could change all the Type 9s to a dummy model, which is what I do. So if I'm going to create a new stage and I don't want to use any of those moving models, but if I want them to go away for whatever reason, I can, for example, we can, let's just look at this and go polygon. Oh no, that's too big. Let's go here. All right, and detach that and call it dummy. And we're going to go add selection to new layer. Now, and let's hide, oh, let's scale it so it's nice and small. Now, this has its texture applied, so we don't have to mess with the textures. So I'm just going to make it nice and small, and then I'm going to like bury it way down under the visibility of the map. Now I'm going to export this as 1. So whatever model is 1, we should actually look at that first, see what 1 is. Hard to say. Let's look at it here. What's model 1? Oh, we don't. Oh, yeah. So this is one of the moving models. So let's say this, because this is going to slide over when we solve the puzzle. So let's say we want to get rid of all the models in the game, even the moving models. So we're going to make this dummy right here. Where's the dummy? Come on, man. Isolate. Okay. Oh, here it is. So I'm going to export this triangle as 1. Now, what we do in the model data text for all the number 9s is change the bin number to 1. Now, what you can't change in the number 9 entries is the SMX reference. This is what's important. If you change this, you might as well just delete it, because it's going to make the game crash. So the model itself isn't important, it's the SMX entry. But since we're just going to hide everything, we're just hiding everything right now of all these type 9s. So now we can save that and repack. Take that, put it in the UDAS, repack the UDAS, put the UDAS, in ST1. Now we're ready to try it out in the game. Now, what's going to be missing from all of this now is those shadows, this bell, that door will be there, and those 2 sliding, that stuff's going to be missing. These two halves of that will be missing. All right, so let's try it again. Everything is gone. I don't even know what direction I'm pointing in now. Okay, there's my chairs. So like I said, the bell's gone. The shadows are gone. All we see now are effects and ETM models and ITA models. And if I really wanted to just get rid of those effects and not mess with anything, I could just go in the UDAS, EFF. I'm opening this in hex, the EFF file, and fill it with zeros. There. Now repack. Oh, sorry. And then to our game again. Now all the trees are going to be gone. So all that's left is the ETM models and my chairs. Thank God I have somewhere to sit in this big, lonely, empty space. So there you have it. And theoretically, it's like you can do more stuff. Like, let's say we don't even want to use any of those models anymore. We're going into here. Let's get let's get rid of all these models now. Now this is the interesting part. When we're creating a custom stage that involves the models that were originally in the room, and we don't want to remake the whole TPL and everything, we have to be very careful with this TPL. But what we can do when we're starting a room from scratch and we don't care, we actually delete all of it. And I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm going to delete everything except these. And what we're going to do is, but we need to remake a TPL. Now, what I've included in the SMD file is a model I made that contains, like, I don't know, 170 textures or something. And what we're going to do is import that in here, and we're going to call it 0. I always use 0. The first model is a dummy model. And what I do is I import this dummy model, and it's a model I made that has textures from 0 to 171, except there's a problem with that. Hang on. Skip. Okay, for some reason I forgot this dummy model doesn't work, but this second one does. This first one does, 125. And you can make one of these yourself, or you can use the one that I've included with the tools. Now these are from another pack file, but it doesn't matter, because all it's telling the tool is that there's this many textures in the pack file. So it's, as long as the number of these planes don't exceed the number of textures, you're all right. So I'm just going to export this as 000. Export. Okay, so the next thing I do is I go to the IDX and I set this to 0. And the model count I set to 1. And then my model data text, I keep all the 9s, because remember, they have to be there. And then I get rid of everything else. But I am going to need to export a second model, which is the dummy model for the planes. So we have 1, and where's our dummy? This will be 1, 2, 3, 1, dummy for moving, and this one's dummy for textures. All my scenes have these. First, all right, so then I export this dummy as one. Okay, so the model data text is saying for all these moving textures, use that dummy triangle. I don't even have to put an entry for that first model, 0. It doesn't even have to be drawn up. The only purpose of that first model, 0, is to tell the TPL that the textures exist. Now, the way that I constructed that model, those planes, and the way that I applied those textures was to just make one plane, name it 0, and then apply the texture, and then one at a time. And you can see that all of these textures in this first material file for this first thing are all in numerical sequential order. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that tells the TPL to put the files in that order. So now we have 0 and 1. Our model data text only calls on bin number 1. And let's make sure model data entry. How many? 8 matches. All right. So that needs to be 8. Save that. Double check that IDX. Okay, our first texture is 0. Model count is 2. Now let's repack it. Done. Now, this is important to look at. The TCS file is going to tell us if the TPL was packed properly. Yes, look at this. Perfect. 44, 45. So that means for all the models that we want to add now, we can use up to 125 textures. And if we want to add more, you can add more. You can go V. There's 126. And you go V again, 127. Except this time you have to take the textures, you would have to take textures, it doesn't matter from which pack file. 126. In this case, it's not like, it doesn't make sense for me to do what I'm doing for the room that we're working on, but I'm just showing you how this works. Like if you wanted, see this is 126, and then you take 127, right? And then when you're exporting it, you select the bottom one first, 127, then you export that as 0, 2, 3, 4. But so with this method, we can simply just keep adding models and just create and then delete the TPL each time, and it'll just make a new TPL each time. And we add a new model. I'll show you. So wait, I'm going to undo that. So just look at our TCS from the last one we had. The last one was 125. I just added those two models with those textures applied. So if I do this again, it should, oops, I messed up. Someone's at the door. I'm busy. Can I get a hold of you later? Okay, thank you. Sorry, someone's at my door. Sorry, it was using the old TPL, and the reason for that is because, okay, let's try that again. There. So if we look at the TCS, it'll be a 127 now. Okay, so that's if you want to add more textures. But yeah, so you can make a dummy file that has as many as you want. So what this gives us permission to do, which makes it so much easier, is now I can add models as many as I want. So let's go here. I can add, this could be a model from another room or whatever, but as long as the textures are in this thing are from my pack file, then I can just add them in. I don't have to worry about updating the TPL and whatnot. I can actually take this whole room right here and export it as one model, but I mean, you don't want to do that because things get weird, but with the lighting and stuff. But so let's export this. Actually rotate it. Just let's do the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Okay. 2. Don't worry about that because the texture's already been called on. So now we're going to delete the TPL again. And update the model data text. We're going to put 9. And then we're going to just copy this. Oops. We're copying the one above, but we're going to edit it. and it's pizza. Oops. Model number 2, pizza. And so we're going to fix this to say 0.1285. Okay, bin number 2. We cannot use this SMX entry because that's one of the moving ones. We can, but it gets weird. So by default, FE is an SMX entry you can use. Now I should explain what this is, and I'm sorry I took so long to do so. But the SMX entry is the number in an SMX file. This is an SMX entry now. It has, each one of these has an ID, and in this SMX file, you can change the color of the whole model. You can change the transparency value, the transparency hierarchy. You can change the mode so that it moves, like a rotating fan or a windmill. And you can look at the SMX tutorial for how that works. So, but essentially, this entry, so SMX entry 33 corresponds with SMX well, that's weird. Oh, it would be SMX 33. I opened a different one, not from 103. So anyway, and here is where you can change, like the sky moving. You can, the sky moving would be something like that, where the texture scrolls over the edge of the model. So anyway, that's what this is. So in our new one, we're setting it to FE, which is default. And then actually, and changing this to 8. Okay, so I've just saved that. Now we go back to the IDX, the index file, and change this to 3, save, and back into here, and we've deleted the TPL. So then we go back again, repack. And each time we do this, we can look at the TCS and say that, oh, it's perfect, right? If things get weird and these don't match, like this is 21 is 27 or 24 or whatever, like if you get mismatches in here, that's because the order of your textures are not in numerical sequence. In which case you would have to select the whole entry, like for 3, and then move it to the position that it needs to be in so that all of these are in perfect order. Okay, so let's have a look at our game again. I'm going to actually go back to what I was just talking about, this numerical order thing. I'm going to show you what that looks like when it's messed up, okay? But first, let's just look at our new model in the game. Where are you? Doesn't seem to be here. So what did we do wrong? Well, let's have a look at the model Datatex. Ah, the scale is 0. I scaled it. It should be 1. I got too excited with all my zeros there. So again, we're going to delete the TPL and repack. SMD is going into the UDAS mod. and we're going to repack the UDAS, put that in ST1, go back to our game, and reload. There it is. And you can see it actually includes the bell because I included the bell here. Okay, so let's go back to that issue that I talked about, the textures being in incorrect order. So if my material file for one was, let's say, I'm going to put 4, I'm going to put it at the very beginning. So now it starts at 4 and then goes to 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, okay? 5, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then starting with 4. Now I'm going to go into there. Now that is the material file for this first dummy file with all our textures, right? That's for this plane. That's for this model, right? So if the materials are in the wrong order, let's delete this for a second, and I repack, it packs fine, it's going to work, it's going to load the game. But if you look at the TCS, it is now telling the game engine that this texture that's supposed to be loaded 0 is actually going to load this texture. Now you have two ways to correct this. There's the old method, which is to physically rename this file to 0 and rename this one to 4, which gets very confusing and hard to do because you have to make new folders because of name conflicts. Or you can do it by the way that I learned, or actually invented, was to make sure that all your files in your material file are in numerical sequential order, which is to have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if you look at that and I save it, I get rid of this, and I repack it, you'll see that the TCS is right, whereas the old one is 4 at the beginning. Okay? So this TCS is important when you're adding new textures. Now I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to show you. Now I will quickly look at the written tutorial. And just to see if there's anything I missed. Okay, so which room do you want to use? We used 108. Before you pick a room, just to make a custom room, you got to think of like, what sounds exist in this room? What features does this room have? Because we can't necessarily use all the features of one room in another room. For example, if there's lightning in a room, we can't port lightning effects to other rooms. So if you wanted lightning, you would have to pick a room that already had lightning. Similarly, if there are environmental effects that you like rain, there are some rain effects that we cannot port from other rooms. So you will have to pick a room that already has rain. And others, the same goes for environmental sounds. Presently, I do not know how to insert or change the environmental sounds. I know how to change the music, and I know workarounds by changing putting environmental sounds in the music file, but right now I don't know how to change the environmental sounds. So if you wanted to make an office building custom room and you've put it inside a room that has lots of wind blowing, it might not make sense. So if you wanted an office building, you would have to pick a room that is indoors that doesn't have wind sounds. We can change other things like the room footstep sounds and that, but the environmental sounds presently we can't. There are also other things to consider like AEV events, like do you want to use some of the features like a collapsing ceiling or like some of the cutscenes or whatever. And you can look at the written version of my tutorial and it will explain things in very precise detail. So I'm just looking at all the things that I wrote about. I think I covered everything. There's the dummy model thing I talked about. Okay, we've covered all of this. We've done the IDX file. I have noticed, I didn't know what these were at first, but these are actually positions of some of the moving models, and we never need to edit these. But that's what I noticed when I started messing with some of those. Okay, we've covered that. Okay, this is the next part, and I really don't want to do this, and I might just leave this to the leave this into the text file because it's very technical, and I don't have the time or patience to do it all in a video. It's here and will be explained. So I think that's going to conclude the SMD tutorial. Please reference the text file, but you get a basic understanding of what is involved here. And just to recap, this model data text, remember that you're dealing with scale. If some rooms are scaled differently, and essentially what you want to do is open up a room and like we did today and move stuff around. Like if you're just beginning, don't try and make a whole scene, like unless you get the workflow down, but just get comfortable with editing the model data text. Like just try and do what we did at the very beginning by making multiple instances of things and placing them beside each other and whatnot. Okay, so that concludes our tutorial for now. I want to thank Son of Persia. You are a wonderful human being, and I want to thank Albert too. Like, you are another wonderful human being. All the people who took the time to teach me, and yeah, my endless emails, like thousands of emails, and I'm hoping that I can share everything that I learned with you guys. Okay? Take care, friends. Happy New Year.